Somebody left you out of something small this week. A message thread you were not added to. A plan made without you. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth mentioning to anyone, and yet you felt it somewhere behind your sternum, like a door closing in your chest. You probably told yourself you were being ridiculous. You were not. Your brain was doing exactly what it evolved to do, and what it was doing was treating that moment as an injury, not as a metaphor for an injury, as one. We talk about this constantly without noticing. A broken heart, hurt feelings. She crushed him. He was gutted. Every language on earth reaches for the vocabulary of physical damage to describe social damage, and for a long time, everyone assumed that was just poetry. A convenient way to describe something abstract. It is not poetry. It turns out the wiring is shared. In 2003, a neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger put people inside an fMRI scanner and had them play a very simple video game. 3 cartoon figures on a screen, tossing a ball between them. One of them was the participant. The other 2, they were told, were real people in other rooms. They were not. They were software. For the first minute, the game is pleasant and completely unremarkable. The ball comes to you, you throw it on, it comes back. Then the 2 other players quietly stop throwing it to you. They keep playing with each other. Nobody explains why. Nobody says anything at all, because there is nobody there. The game is called Cyberball, and it is one of the cruelest simple experiments ever designed, because everyone knows exactly what it feels like. Here is what Eisenberger saw on the scans. 2 regions lit up: the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. If you have never heard those names, that is fine. What matters is what else activates them. Physical pain. Burn your hand on a pan, and those are the regions that turn the injury into the feeling you call hurting. Not the part that registers where the damage is, the part that makes it awful. The part that demands you do something about it right now. Being excluded from a pointless ballgame by 2 computer programs activated the same machinery. And the more distressed a person reported feeling afterwards, the harder those regions had worked during the game. The brain scan tracked the hurt, so the question stops being whether social pain is real and becomes something stranger. If your body is genuinely running exclusion through the pain system, what else about pain should also be true of it? A team led by C. Nathan DeWall asked the obvious follow-up, and the answer is one of those results that sounds like a joke until you read the paper. They gave people acetaminophen, ordinary paracetamol, the thing in your cupboard for headaches, 2,000 milligrams a day for 3 weeks. Others got a placebo and had no idea which group they were in. Then they measured social pain. The people on the painkiller reported significantly less of it in their daily lives. And when they were put back in the scanner and rejected again, those same 2 regions, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, responded less strongly than in the placebo group. A headache pill measurably dulled the experience of being left out. Sit with how strange that is. Not because you should take paracetamol for loneliness, you absolutely should not, but because of what it proves. The overlap is not a loose analogy that shows up on a scan. It is deep enough that the same chemical reaches both, which raises the real question. Why would evolution build it this way? Why would a brain be designed so that a text message left on read can reach into the same circuitry as a burn? The answer comes from a psychologist named John Cacioppo, who spent his career on this and arrived somewhere counterintuitive. Loneliness, he argued, is not a defect. It is not a personality flaw or a modern affliction. It is a biological signal, and it belongs in the same category as hunger and thirst. Think about what hunger actually is. It is not damage. It is an alarm. It is your body producing an unpleasant sensation on purpose in order to make you do something specific before the situation becomes fatal. Thirst does the same. So does pain from a hot surface. Cacioppo's argument is that loneliness is that same kind of alarm, aimed at a different threat. Because for almost the entire history of our species, being separated from your group was not sad. It was lethal. You cannot defend yourself alone through the night. You cannot hunt large animals alone. You cannot survive an injury or an illness alone, because there is nobody to bring you water. Any ancestor who wandered away from the group and felt perfectly relaxed about it did not become anybody's ancestor. The ones who felt terrible went back. So the discomfort you feel when you are excluded is doing a job. It is your body generating an unpleasant enough signal to make you repair the connection, using the only machinery it had available for urgent problems, the pain system, which is elegant and also means something uncomfortable is true. The feeling is not an overreaction. It is a smoke alarm doing exactly what smoke alarms do. But here is where the story turns, and it turns twice. The first turn is that this alarm is not only unpleasant, it is dangerous. Julianne Holt-Lundstad, a researcher at Brigham Young University, did something enormous. She gathered the available global data on social connection and mortality and pooled it. Not one study, hundreds of them, covering more than 3 million people, followed over years. Then she asked a simple question. Does being lonely change how long you live? It does. Substantially. Weak social connection was associated with a significantly increased risk of dying early, and the size of that effect put it in the same territory as the risk factors we take extremely seriously. Comparable to smoking. Larger than obesity, larger than physical inactivity. Read that again because the framing usually gets it backwards. This is not saying lonely people feel worse. It is saying lonely people die sooner, at rates that would trigger a public health campaign if the cause were anything else. Nobody puts a warning label on an empty calendar. So how does a feeling do that? Because a feeling cannot puncture an artery, it works the slow way. Chronic loneliness keeps stress hormones elevated. It raises inflammation and keeps it raised. It disrupts sleep, and disrupted sleep degrades almost everything else. None of these kill you this year. All of them, running continuously for a decade, change your odds. The alarm was designed to be temporary. Ring, get answered, stop. It was never built to run for years without resolution. And that brings us to the second turn, which is the cruelest part of the whole thing. Cacioppo found that loneliness does not simply make you want company. It changes how you read other people. A lonely brain becomes hypervigilant to social threat. It scans faces more carefully. It interprets neutral expressions as colder than they are. It notices slights that were not there, and remembers rejections more sharply than acceptances, which makes complete sense if you think about what the alarm is for. If being excluded is lethal, then a brain that detects early signs of exclusion will do better than one that misses them. Sensitivity is protective, except it does not stay protective, because a person who is scanning for rejection tends to find it. They pull back slightly. They test people. They read hesitation into an ordinary pause. And other people who cannot see any of this happening experience them as distant and respond by being slightly more distant themselves. The alarm designed to push you back toward people starts quietly pushing them away. That is the trap. Loneliness is not a passive state you sit inside waiting for it to end. It is an active process that makes reconnection harder, precisely because it is working so hard to make reconnection urgent. There is one more thing worth understanding, and it explains why this is getting worse rather than better. You are the most contactable human being who has ever lived. You are carrying a device that can reach almost anyone you have ever met, instantly, at any hour. By every measure your ancestors would have used, you are drowning in connection. So why are loneliness rates climbing? Because the alarm was never calibrated for contact. It was calibrated for presence. The system evolved in an environment where the only way to know someone was on your side was that they were physically there, sharing food, sitting close enough to touch, staying through the night. Those were the signals it learned to read. Proximity, time, physical presence over and over again. A message does not carry those signals. Neither does a comment or a view or a notification. Your conscious mind counts them as contact and feels reassured. The older system underneath is not consulting your conscious mind. It is looking for the specific evidence it was built to look for and finding almost none of it, which produces something genuinely modern and genuinely strange. You can spend an entire evening in continuous communication with other people and go to bed with the alarm still ringing, and then blame yourself for it. Because on paper, you were not alone at all. You were not alone. You were unaccompanied. Your body can tell the difference even when you cannot. So where does that leave you sitting there, still slightly bothered about a message thread? It leaves you with something more useful than reassurance. The feeling in your chest is not weakness, and it is not you being dramatic. It is a signal generated by ancient machinery using the pain system because that was the loudest channel available. It is your body telling you that something it considers a survival requirement is not being met. You would not tell yourself you were being ridiculous for feeling hungry. And knowing what the signal is changes what you can do with it. Not to make it stop. You cannot argue a smoke alarm into silence, and you should not want to. But you can recognize the second turn when it starts. You can notice when you are reading coldness into a short reply. You can notice when you are pulling back and calling it self-protection. That noticing is the only part of this loop you actually control, because everything else about it was installed long before you, in people who needed it to stay alive, and it does not know that you are safe now. It only knows that you are alone, and that being alone used to mean something very specific. Somebody left you out of something small this week. Your body did not treat it as small. It treated it as an injury, because for almost all of human history, that is exactly what it was.